Hello, and welcome to episode 29 of the Motivational Millennial Podcast. Today we are speaking with Nicholas and Amanda Bayerle, who are a couple of young, successful entrepreneurs, and it was an absolute pleasure to talk to both of them about their journey. And it was really cool because we were talking to two people, right? So
they are two people. Yes, that's right. They are two individual humans.
Well, I mean, we got to hear about what their journey was like building a company together. So we got to hear about the entrepreneurial journey, but also each of their individual. It's like a 2-for-1 episode.
That's right. And their relationship with each other. I see where you're going with that.
Yes,
okay,
thank you.
Two people. My goodness.
It was really cool. It was a great dynamic. So
it was really fun.
So stay tuned for the after show when Blake and I will share our biggest takeaways and explore a little bit more about why we love talking to two people.
Let's get into the interview.
Hello and welcome to the Motivational Millennial Podcast, where we talk with inspiring members of the millennial generation who are living life with a sense of purpose and achieving their dreams. I'm Ivy LeClaire.
And I'm Blake Brandis.
We have two motivational millennial guests today.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! They are Nicholas and Amanda Bayerle. Nicholas and Amanda are the founders of the $1 Billion Body, where they help men reach their ultimate state of health, power, and confidence. They have helped thousands of men and women look and feel like $1 billion and coach some of the top entrepreneurs. Nicholas and Amanda were named top 30 under 30 influencers and have been featured in bodybuilding.com and Oxygen magazine. Welcome to the show, you two.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so happy to have 4 people on the show.
4 people!
This is exciting.
I know, you are our first duo
It's true.
interview.
It's going to be quadruple the power.
That's right.
So we'd love to hear more about what you're up to and what you love about it.
Yeah, so what we're up to right now is we just made the transition to working only with men for a certain amount of time. So that's been a very interesting transition that we thought about for a few months, and we didn't know if it was going to be a good thing or a bad thing. And so after we made the transition, all of a sudden we started seeing massive increase. And so it's so funny how seemingly little decisions can bring so much a flood of blessing into your life. So yeah, that's what we've been focusing on now, is helping men look and feel like $1 billion.
What was the decision process to just focus on working with men?
Yeah, so we work way differently than a lot of people. We're very purpose driven, and we always feel like I'd rather do what I know is right and fail than do what I already know is wrong and succeed. We were making more money and had more stuff training men and women than we had ever had in our entire life. We didn't have some down business month and go, oh, I think we should make a transition. It was, we looked like we were doing the best ever, and we felt like we were doing the wrong thing at the time from doing both at the same time. And so more so than anything, I was just ready to do the right thing, what I felt like was right for us, even if it looked like I was going to fail in front of everyone, even if we dropped our revenue or something like that, because I knew ultimately us doing what we felt like we were supposed to do was more important than us looking good in front of everyone else. And luckily for us, the two went hand in hand, and we ended up transitioning and working with men what we felt like we were supposed to do, so we can tailor content specifically to them, because men and women are very different. And on top of that, it came with a massive increase in our business. So we're grateful on both sides.
Wow. Could you share the idea? You mentioned this sense of purpose. Could you share that sense of purpose for the $1 Billion Body?
Yeah, so the whole point, the whole purpose is to help male entrepreneurs, influencers, and, you know, in the future we'll be working with women as well, but help them achieve their ultimate state of power, health, and confidence, where they can go out there and achieve in their businesses and in their relationships at a level that they couldn't do before getting in contact and linking up with us. So we just make sure that they hormonally, physically, spiritually, and mentally are performing at 100%, because I know ultimately that they can execute on their destiny at that point, and they'll be satisfied with the results that they can produce. So we help people go out there and make more money, have better relationships, and really just enjoy life a lot more from transforming their body first.
And Amanda, what has the transition been like for you? I mean, obviously going from working with men and women to now just focusing on the men's side of it.
Well, it's just been incredible. You know, I get to kind of step into a different role for myself, which has been absolutely amazing. I just get to really support Nicholas and everything that he needs, and then also all of the men in our community, and get to have that little outside woman perspective on things. And yeah, so I actually, for our clients, I do pretty much all of the meal plans and the workout plans, and Nicholas, helps out with the workout plans as well. But I do most of the meal plans, which is nice. It's different for sure, working with women who want to have lots of variety and want to cook more, and men who just want something healthy and fast and that tastes good. And so we've been able to really master like how men eat and what they want. So that's been amazing since we have been doing this for a while. So it's been an awesome transition just to see so many men just come together and support each other in a way that we didn't have before.
What kind of reasons do you find that people are wanting to make that transformation in their lives?
They realize that health is the greatest wealth. When it comes down to it, there's only 3 things in your life. And this is something that we teach all the time, is that there's 3 things in your life that if those 3 things are going amazing, you're happy. These are the most important things. And if these aren't your top priorities in your life, then that's probably why you're not super happy, because it's really hard to make a 5th priority in your life succeed. And what those 3 priorities are, your physical health, so your health, your family, so connecting, getting a husband or a wife, and then from there, your business or impact. And if those 3 things are prospering, you're so happy. And if any of those 3 aren't prospering, there's always going to be some feeling of like discontentment and not being okay. Now, from there, which one of the 3 will make the biggest impact, right? You can always go out there and start a business or impact, but that won't necessarily make you healthier or help your relationship. We see relationships all over the world fail because you're working too hard, and health fail because you're just focused on your work or your impact. You go into relationships, you can invest in your relationship, and that makes you really happy, but it doesn't necessarily make you healthier. I could tell you that from firsthand, because when I got married for 6 months, I never went into the gym. I kind of just gave up on all that stuff. So ultimately that didn't make me healthier. And a lot of times that's not going to sit there and grow your business as well. So I realized that under those top 3 things, investing in your health gives you more confidence, more energy, more brain function, more mental clarity. Our average client right now is getting 2 hours of productivity per day. That's 48-hour workdays a year. That's just each year. So 48-hour workdays more of work that they're getting done, or time with their family, time with their wife, time on an extracurricular activity. So they're able to achieve more in their business, have more time in their relationship because they come home from work or working on their business. They're not like needing to recharge or sit there and gel out and all these terms that we hear all the time. So ultimately, the number one thing that's going to grow the 3 areas of your life that you care about is going to be health. And the last thing real quick is just that there's only a few things that you can control in your life. And it's the things that only have to do with you. And eating, sleeping, drinking, breathing, and exercise are all things that you can fully control. And so if you can commit to that and execute on it, then that raises your commitment levels and ability to execute on things that you can't control, which is relationships and business.
I love this perspective so much because for me, it's really a lens of self-care. It can be such an amazing experience to realize that you are a priority for you, and that spills into the rest of your life. It empowers you to live a more fulfilling life, to honor yourself in many different ways, because you are taking the time to actually really care about your physical body and releasing stress and giving yourself more energy and all of these things. It's like an amazing self-care tool as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I know that if I don't take care of myself first, I get more stressed out. I'm not the best me that I can be. And for women, it's so important to take care of ourselves because we're always wanting to take care of other people. And, same goes for men. They're always working, and their stress levels are up, which actually decreases testosterone, which is not something men want.
I'm interested, not to go too far down this rabbit hole, but having worked with so many different people, both men and women, through your training and through your own programs, what kind of observations have you noticed about gender? I mean, I know we're speaking really broadly about men tend to do X, women tend to do Y. I guess technically from a chromosomal standpoint, that would be the opposite. But what kind of observations about gender have you all seen just from doing this work?
I mean, the hormone levels are completely different, and then the chemicals in the brain work completely different. So you have dopamine, right, for men, and then you have testosterone in men that wants to be higher than estrogen. And so ultimately the way that our bodies function are really, really different. And the way that we want to get from A to B is a little bit different. You know, higher testosterone in men makes you more competitive, things like that. And that's why watching games and like watching sports on TV is so fun for men, because your testosterone goes through the roof when you're watching it. And then for women, sometimes kind of like, why the heck are they watching this so much? So, you know, when it comes to, if you even saw coaches for sports teams, like a men's only sport or a woman's only sport, the coaching is way different. And if you try to flip flop the two, a lot of times they end up failing. And we've seen this in athletic communities where there's like, let's say they merge the two. It's men and women teams with one male leader and then a men and women team battling against each other. We've noticed that a lot of times the guys who are normally leading men have a really hard time leading women because they don't know how to motivate them. So we've noticed that men are very commitment driven. They want to do things whether the feeling's there or not. And for women, they really want to know the ROI and they want to know why they're doing it. And so a lot of the things like that, that's why the verbiage is completely different. The food you eat is different. The way you react and handle situations is different. And the way you feel loved is different. Women want to be heard, and they don't want to have their problems figured out for them all the time. They just want to be heard. Men want to solve problems. And so, you know, when you give a man a problem to solve, he's going to have dopamine release in his brain and he's going to feel freaking awesome. You sit there and try to solve a woman's problem and she's going to feel unloved. But if you sit there and listen to her and she's heard, she's going to feel love and have serotonin release. So different things like that, where on a scientific level, we just know that side of things. And that's why we've had such a high success rate, because we know not just the feelings and what should work in the science, but we've also experienced it ourselves. And then on top of that, we also have all the data to back it up.
It's really interesting to hear that scientific perspective. Thank you for sharing, because I think sometimes it can be a very challenging topic to discuss from a centered place. And I think you did a really nice job of laying out part of some of the reasons that would typically happen. Obviously, acknowledging that different people are going to have different hormonal levels and experiences for themselves. But it's really cool that you've been able to tap into that through your work and see, okay, if someone's experiencing a deficiency in one of these areas, this might be why. And as we're talking about how you've developed on your own journey here, in what ways have you both had to grow to achieve your dreams that you've been working on so far?
What things that we've had to grow in? I mean, so many different things. I think one of the biggest things, especially for couples that work together, is communication. In any business, you need to have really clear communication and good communication with the person that you're working with, or your team members, or even clients. You know, you need to set expectations. You need to communicate. And so that's something that we've really had to grow in, not only as a couple, but also as, you know, business partners, is making sure that we're clear, making sure that we're both understood and we're going towards the same thing. And just communication can get so tricky sometimes, you know, especially when you don't, or if you do communicate differently, you know, extroverts versus introverts, you know, people who process different things. So, you know, finding that and growing in that, I think, is so important. Communication obviously is very important for business in general, because if you can't communicate your message, then no one knows what you do or what you're selling. So I think it's very, very important, something that I've had to personally grow in.
And Nicholas, how about you?
So for my answer, I mean, just growth as a person. You know, I grew up and I was the youngest kid in the world to start racing bicycles. And so I had this like pressure on my shoulders that I really wanted to do something great. And then from there, I ended up transitioning to racing motorcycles when I was 5 years old. And by around 9 years old, I had realized that this is what I want to do with my life. I don't want to go to school. I don't want to get a job. I never had any vision for anything else in my life besides racing motocross. And I don't know if it was a hormonal thing or a family situation or what it was, but I had these like the fear creep in on me all the time that kept me from going out and fully expressing. I always thought everyone was better than me, blah, blah, blah. But my only goal was to be number one. And I still remember when I was like 12, 13 years old, I got to the point where I was pretty much ready to break. I was gagging and throwing up so that I could not go and ride motocross, even though my number one goal in life was to become pro, and I had no other ambitions in my entire life, but I was so nervous that I just wanted to have an excuse to not perform at the highest level. And I remember just reaching out to someone who was a mentor of mine at the time, and I was trying to figure out if I could get strength from them to be able to endure and go on to become a professional motocross rider. And so I followed them out into the garage at my house, and I remember stressing to them, I want to be the best. I want to be the best in the world. I'll do whatever it takes. Let's do this. But I was in a state where I was like, can I? Do you think I can? And they turned around and they told me, you'll never be the best. And from there, I quit everything that I ever had done in my life at that point. I ended up gaining 60 pounds throughout my whole time in high school. I had no vision. I dropped from a 3.4 to a 1.8 GPA. I almost didn't even graduate from high school. And so at that point, it was like, wow, I'm 60 pounds overweight. I have no vision for my entire life because the only thing I ever wanted to do, I just squandered. My only vision for my life, the only thing that I thought I would ever do. I'm never going to get a job. I'm never going to go to school. All these different things. And so it wasn't until some kid that was a boxer who came to school with a meal plan and certain foods. And all of a sudden I go, what are you doing? Why are you eating those foods? And he goes, well, I'm a boxer and my coach put me on a meal plan so that I could weigh in at the correct weight so I could fight. And all of a sudden it just clicked for me that, my gosh, there's a way to change. There's something I could do to get out of this situation that I'm in, that I'm 60 pounds overweight. I mean, to the point where literally I went skateboarding and I tried to do something that I could do when I was 12 years old. And I was so overweight that I fell and broke my tailbone. First try. Boom. Done. Like just another slap in the face of like, my goodness, I'm 60 pounds overweight and then I get kicked while I'm down and break my tailbone. And so I go home, I take that meal plan, and in 6 months I was 53 pounds down. And all of a sudden I started feeling the confidence come back, and I started feeling the ambitions come back, and I started realizing that I could do more, and I was limiting myself by what I was filling my body with, what I thought I was capable of. I started realizing there was a direct correlation between fueling myself and fueling my success. And that's through that process I ended up finding my wife, and through that process I started going out and taking new risks and starting businesses. And now that's led us to a married couple at 24 and 22 that is fully confident in themselves, that are top 30 entrepreneurs under 30 years old in the world. And so it's just absolutely ridiculous what can happen with a simple investment in yourself. And it's also crazy what can happen when you have that downward spiral and you start believing and limiting your belief of what you can do based on what you have. So if there's anything that I've had to overcome, it's all that. I think I was the most self-conscious person on the planet. And it wasn't until I started investing in myself that I grew in my confidence, because I started doing the things that I knew I should do from the very beginning.
Wow. Thank you for sharing such a personal story there. And I think what a powerful reminder of the impact that one sentence can have on somebody's life. And thankfully, I think you've really taken that opportunity, or that challenge, I guess, and turned it into an opportunity, and really transformed yourself. But how devastating it must have been to hear you'll never be the best. And it just sounds like your whole world came crashing down in that moment.
Well, it's an interesting perspective that you bring up. It reminds me of Elizabeth Gilbert. Do y'all know Elizabeth Gilbert?
Yes. Yeah. We really like her. Her speech when she did with Oprah, she said, my audience has enough insecurities. They don't need my insecurities when I go up and speak.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love her. I was listening to an episode of her podcast, Magic Lessons, and she was talking about this perspective. It reminds me, even though you had this very clear passion, the fear was keeping you from moving forward. And so she says that sometimes when we're trying to live a creative life, we're secretly just waiting for the one person to say the thing that we secretly are thinking ourselves. Meaning, we have the subconscious belief that we're not good enough. And so even though we may have all these people that are like, you're doing really well, you're doing really well, we only notice the ones that are saying, you're not doing that well, you're not doing that well, because there's a part of us that is trying to subconsciously feed that fear.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one of the greatest moments of my life now, which is so funny, because I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today if it wasn't for that specific moment. So now that I'm on the other side of heartache, I'm so grateful to have gone through that. I mean, I didn't talk to my dad for 2.5 years. I went and lived with my mom. I locked him out of my house. I was 10 minutes away. And now we have the best relationship that we've ever had. And it wasn't until, that one transformation. That's why we're so passionate and can see the direct correlation of how investing in yourself can help improve every area of your life, especially when it comes to your physical health. I had so many things wrong with me and so many limitations on what I thought I could achieve and things in my life. To the point where I even went back afterwards at 20 years old and I went and bought another motorcycle. And for like a year, I fully invested 4 days a week into riding again, to the point where I pretty much got to the level where I could turn pro, and then just gave it up because I realized that this wasn't even something that I wanted to do with my life. It didn't project into the future that I wanted. I want to go out there and help other people with my passion rather than just having a passion that I get to enjoy.
We'd love to hear a story from each of you of the most significant challenge that you have faced so far and what it was like for you to overcome that challenge.
Oh my goodness. It's hard to pick just one because I feel like, there should be one that just stands out, but what just comes to my mind right now is, Nicholas had his story of his, transformation and really what clicked for him. And I think for me, the biggest challenge that I had to face was not having confidence in myself. And this was about over 5.5 years ago when I met Nicholas. And our backstory is, he was healthy when I met him and I wasn't at all. I was 25 pounds overweight. I was living off of fast food and all processed things. And I was so embarrassed to take off my bathing suit cover up when I was with him. And I was like, well, that's not good because obviously we want to get married and I like this guy a lot and I'm so embarrassed with my body. And my whole life I've always been so confident. Ask anyone. I was, in everything, an overachiever, a perfectionist. Outside, my life looked absolutely perfect. So I was so confident. But at that point, because I had let myself go and not eating healthy just compounds over time and not working out. And so at that moment, that was my biggest challenge, was like, wow, I'm not confident in myself. This is the first time I've ever experienced this. And so I had to make a change and overcome that. And now, obviously, it's our message, which has been the biggest blessing. So I think challenges always breed something that is going to be your message in the future.
Yeah, and I even want to jump in on that because I feel for me, this has been a big thing. This has been a big strength to mine since people already heard about a lot of my weaknesses. One of the big strengths of mine is that I've always believed that I could do anything. Like if you were to give me a basketball right now and give me a little bit of a pep talk, I literally believe that if I pushed hard enough and worked hard enough at 5'7", that I could become a professional basketball player. I absolutely 100% believe that I could do that. And that's been one of the biggest blessings and one of the biggest curses in my life because sometimes that's just stupid. I'm 5'7", never really played basketball before, but like something inside of me just goes, I think I could do that. Like I could put in the work for this. And one of the biggest problems out there right now is that people are being sold that they don't have what they need already to go out and do what they want. And I believe that's one of the biggest reasons why people are having success is because they didn't believe that. They just went out there and said, okay, this is what I want to do. And I'm going to go do it, whatever the result is. And I'll learn along the way. It's like they always say, like, start building the plane as you're flying. Like, just start flying and then just start building the plane before you have to land. Like this whole thing, like, it doesn't matter. Just go out there and act like you know what you're doing. Be equally willing to learn from everyone around you, asking and soaking in information and learning from people and not acting prideful about it, but equally be sitting there going, I can do anything. Like I can go out and execute on anything and I know I'll succeed. And that's the biggest thing that I see right now. If you can get it in your head that you have already inside of you everything you need to go out and do any vision you can create in your mind right now. So how big of a vision can you create in your mind? And whatever you can create, you can physically do right now. You have the power already to accomplish that. And so if you would just go and do that instead of believing that you need another course or that you even need to listen to another show or that you need more help or more education or more skill or more ability, you just don't. You don't need more of it. You just need to believe that you already have it and then go out there and do it and then reevaluate afterwards on the areas that you can improve. But the number one way you'll fail is if you never believe you're good enough to even start.
Feeling very inspired right now.
I know.
It's such a great message too, because one of the most powerful things I think anyone can hear and truly believe is you are enough. And what you're saying right now is you are already enough. And it is so hard, especially for people who are interested in personal development work, because there's always the next book you could read, or there's always a better plan you should be developing. And I think that paralysis that really is just self-doubt manifested as an excuse. Like, oh, I haven't planned this out well enough. To your point about building the plane while you're flying, what better way to learn than by doing? Once you're in the motion, then you really, go ahead, Ivy.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like, the illusion that we have is that we can somehow learn and prepare enough that there's no way we could possibly fail once we actually do the thing. And in reality, it doesn't matter how much you read or how much you listen to, nothing can possibly replace actually taking action and learning by doing. Because before that, it's all abstract. It's like, I think I understand what that means. And
a lot of times it's going to be repetitions. But like, imagine if you sat there and you watched someone swing a baseball bat all day and you studied all of it because you just thought, I don't want to strike out on my first at bat. Like the first time I go up and hit, or the first time I go to the batting cages, I just don't want to strike out. So for 10 years, I'm going to watch every video that I can about baseball while there's someone out there just not even giving a crap, just actually out there doing the repetitions and practicing and balancing that practice with also watching videos and getting better and learning their stance and learning how they can get more power and all these different things. But who's going to win? It's like whether you hit the ball or not doesn't even matter. Like, it's just the repetition of it over and over again. And so it's just ridiculous that people are so scared to fail at whatever it is they want to do. If you would just fail quickly, it would just be so much easier. It's like, who's going to hit more balls? Who's going to hit more home runs? Like, they always say that Michael Jordan wasn't really that great of a shooter. He just took way more shots than everyone else. And that's why he's so famous. He really, he missed so many shots and he lost so many games because he took the final shot and missed. He was just always willing to take the final shot, whereas everyone else was too scared.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier that focusing on the results is one of the things that can be the most discouraging, because if you're worried about what the result of the action is, obviously there's a certain amount of care that we want to take with anything we're doing. We don't want to hurt people, but the process is really the most important thing. And at a certain point, when you hit the groove in taking action, the results just start happening and you don't have to worry about them as much. So in that spirit, I'm curious, what of your results and accomplishments that you have achieved have surprised you the most, if any of them have surprised you?
So when it comes to what things have I executed on and I was surprised by the results that I got?
Sure.
In a positive or negative way? Because I've been surprised both ways.
Yeah, let's I'm happy to hear both.
So I 100% believed that when we built our first business that I would never fail. I thought I was good for life, and we lost $32,000 in revenue in 1 month. When we were 21 and 20, 22 and 20 or something like that. And so a couple years ago, 3 years ago, we all of a sudden just tanked everything. And so that was one thing that on a negative side, I never thought would ever happen. And I wasn't putting in the work. I wasn't staying consistent. I got really lazy. I had the worst part of success is a quote that once you get a little bit of success, you start getting lazy. And so the worst part of success is getting a little bit of it, because then it ends up just making you stop work so hard. So you need to make sure you balance out work with also enjoying what you're getting. And some of the biggest things that really surprised me is when I started, instead of sitting there and thinking about what's a product I could create to go out there and sell to people, but I started helping people on a minor level and then figuring out what they needed from that point to continue their journey of health. And I started creating products based on what their needs were out of the people that I was helping. And then I started selling those products to the people that needed that help and started realizing that, wow, I bet there's a lot of people out there that when they go through one of our introductory products are going to have that same problem. And it's created like a 40x success compared to when I tried to do it the backwards way of, oh, I'm going to create a product on what I think people need. And so the biggest thing that's really wowed me is when we stopped focusing so much on what product do we want to create to go help people, and we started helping people and figuring out what product they wanted to help them.
That's a great perspective on product development. And I think a good reminder for anyone who's an entrepreneur to really think about the user and the customer needs first. And that's a great way to do it too, is to actually go out and, like you said, help people not have to think, okay, I have to have the scalable solution that's going to go out and immediately help every entrepreneur everywhere. I love that. And Amanda, for you, what of your accomplishments has surprised you the most?
Oh my goodness. I think one of the biggest accomplishments that we have had together as a couple is working together. I think that's a huge accomplishment. I see so many couples out there who they can't work together, and it causes a lot of strife in the relationship. And I just think that's such a big accomplishment for us. And, you know, you work on it every single day. And because you have to separate the balance of like, all right, business and relationship time and all of these different things that factor into life. And I feel like we've really been able to master that and inspire so many others that can do it as well. And that's probably one of my biggest accomplishments is, you know, being able to have Nicholas lead me not only in marriage, but then also in business, because I used to be very dominant and very like, I'm going to do my own thing and no one's going to tell me what to do, because I was very independent. And then coming into his leadership in, you know, relationship and business has been a huge accomplishment for me, because I've had to lay down, you know, my will to always be the right one and tell, you know, what's going to happen, but, you know, also factor in his opinions and what his vision is for everything. And that's, I mean, it's hard to explain, but if you see people that try to work together, it's really hard when you have two people that both want to lead. You got to have one leader. And I can say that, you know, in our marriage, you know, he is the leader of our marriage and our business, and it works out super, super well.
It definitely speaks to what you shared earlier about communication and the value of communication and how incredibly important that is. So what advice would each of you like to give to other millennials who are on a journey toward fulfillment and success?
One big thing. So I was just with a man, I don't know, maybe 9-figure business owner this last week, and we spent 5 days together with no Wi-Fi. And so this is going to be directly from him. You know, I'm not a 9-figure business owner. And so I'm going to just give you guys exactly what I got from him, because there's a big movement right now of find your passion and profit from it. But for me, my passions have always changed and shifted with the seasons. Like, I never have had just one thing that I love to do. And I talked to him and I said, we went through all his businesses and I was asking him questions about everything. And I was like, so which one do you love the most? Like, what one are you most passionate about? And he was like, what do you mean? Like, he didn't even get that. He's 55 or 54. He's almost 55. And he's like, what do you mean? Which one am I most passionate about? And at that moment, I realized, holy crap. He never just went there and went, what am I passionate about? Now I'm going to go try to profit from it, which is not a bad thing at all. But ultimately he had a bigger vision of, where do I want to go? If I were to picture myself 40 years from now as a millennial, 30 years from now, 20 years from now, where do I want to be, and how would I define success at that moment? Would it be freedom? Would it be travel? Would it be having a house? Would it be having a family? Would it be unlimited income potential? Would it be $1 million or $10,000 a month? Like, whatever it is, where would success be in the future that you would really define as success? You're like, that's where I want to be and that's where I want to go. And then start drawing up the ways you can get there, rather than sitting there and going, what's my passion? And then never finding it really, because you're like, what am I good at? And what am I passionate about? And how am I going to profit from this? Instead, figure out where you want to go and figure out the different ways you can get to that place, because there's tons of different roads to get there, and start executing on whatever road it is with that goal in mind, because you will always like flounder and not really know where to go. So instead of making the goal where you want to go, make that the vision, and make the goals the things you're going to do to get there. Because you can always control the thing that you're going to do to get somewhere. You just can't control getting to that place. So you can control the ways you're going to get there. So ultimately, millennials out there, everyone, stop worrying about what you're passionate about and blah, 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 because you may not ever find it. And that works for some people, but not everyone. Instead, figure out where you want to go, which ways you can get there, and get your ass to work. Start executing on that. Believe that you already have what it takes to get there, because the people that are teaching you, the people that are up on stage, like the people that are famous, that's all they did. They were the same person as you. They just believed, crap, I'm going to go do this. And they did it. And now they're teaching you that you need some help. So instead, just go out there. Go do it. Figure out where you want to go and execute.
And so often on the path to that goal, you discover passions that you may not have even known you had or that were possible for you. So I am a big proponent of taking something that you're passionate about and combining it with something useful to other people to achieve whatever, like you're saying, those goals of success are. But I think that's really helpful reminder that so often it can be paralyzing to wonder, yeah, what is my passion? Is this what I'm truly meant to be doing? It's like, it's cool. There is no one thing you're meant to be doing. Like, you create what you're meant to be doing by doing it.
Absolutely. And a lot of people are like, I want to help people. I want to help people. I'm like, cool, then just go help people and feel fulfilled. Like, go do that then. Well, because that doesn't make me any money. Okay, well then it sounds like you really, really want money. Like, listen, I remember a couple of years ago, I had a goal of making $285 a day. And up to that point, I was like, okay, this is going to be good. But I never pocketed $285 a day. And some days I'd come home with $150 in my pocket for the day. And I'd be like, okay, well, now what am I going to do? And normally, if I would have just done what I was passionate about, I would have been happy with the work I had done that day because I did a lot of work and I felt accomplished. And I remember going to the free signs on the side of the street with the bookshelves and the tables and the chairs and the sofas that said free. I would take the sign off, I would take pictures, and I would start marketing them on Craigslist and OfferUp and all these different things. And I would start selling people's free in front of their house, free stuff in front of their house. And I would sell it for $10, $15. Like, there was stuff that I just saw the other day. It's not worth it for me to do that anymore, even though it's fun. But I just saw some the other day that I literally could have sold for $300. That was out for free. That was going to get taken by a different company just because they didn't want to have to sit there and sell it and get rid of it. They got all new furniture. We're talking leather sofas, wood tables, like $150 dining room table on Craigslist, $200 sofa, $100 sofa, like just fire sell that stuff. And so it got me that goal of income where I wanted to be, because at the time I wanted to make $100,000 in 1 year. So I go, okay, I need to do that. So that breaks down to around $285 a day that I need to take home. And so all of a sudden, that bigger vision of where I wanted to go got me to do more work rather than just doing my passion, which would have made me come home and go, cool, like right on. But I would have never been happy. And so ultimately having that bigger goal on where you want to go is going to get you to put in a little bit more work to get there, because I would have never went out there at 10 o'clock at night. Like, people would pay me $25 extra to come and deliver it to their house at 10 o'clock at night. And I would go do it because I knew I needed to hit the 285. And if I wasn't there yet, then I was going to go deliver something for $25.
Yeah. What you're speaking to is really being honest with yourself about what you value, what you want to create in your life, and then pursuing whatever that is. And for some people, it would be enough to just, create art and live in a tent and be in the woods and, and that's like, because that's what they're valuing. And that's what living a fulfilling life is. Living in alignment with your values and your biggest vision. And it's so beautiful because living a fulfilling life can look so different for everyone. And it's really about being honest with yourself in that moment. And it's so great that you were honest with yourself in that moment. And you were like, this is really the bigger vision that I want to hold for myself. And then that's what you created.
Yeah, it's so true, Ivy. I mean, we had such different versions of success in the beginning because it was based off what other people said success was. And, now that we are, we're still young, but we are older now, we've realized what success really does mean to us, which is very different than what we thought about in the beginning. It was all about the money in the very beginning because that's what everyone preached to us, unfortunately.
So was there a moment when you made that shift or that transition? I'm curious about how going from that place of being in money focus to where you are now, was it a gradual process or were there a couple decision points that you could identify?
I think for us, it was the fact of when you're always focused on money, and it's not even focused on just making money, it's the focus of like what money actually is. And once you hit that certain income goal, then you're like, okay, what do I do now? Because you've only been focused on that. And I always believe that you need to be focused on, the destination, what the actual vision is and what you want to do with it. Because at the end of the day, once you finally hit that goal, which, we have, and then you stop working because then you achieved it. And then you're like, oh, this wasn't that fulfilling. And so if you have something way greater than that, you're going to keep working and you're going to keep creating because you're not just in it for the money. You're in it for the people that you're changing the lives of. And so for us this year, we have a mission of impacting 100,000 men with our 15-day challenge that we have. And so it doesn't matter how much money we make because we always believe that we're going to be provided for. We already know that we're blessed and we live in abundance. And so our focus is impacting people. And if we can do that, everything else will be taken care of. And so that we'll never stop working on that, and then once we hit that, then we'll go for the next 100,000. So it'll never end on that.
That's a great example of the abundance mindset. If I ever heard one, that's fantastic. Thank you. And could you share a book or quote that has changed the direction of each of your lives?
So the number one book that's changed my life is when I started studying the best influencer that I've ever seen on the planet. There was a guy that lived before cars. He lived before Apple Watches and TV and radio or anything like that. And at 30 years old to 33 and a half years old, he influenced the world to where basically he impacted even to this day, 1/3 of the entire population and literally changed BC to AD. And so we started studying the Bible and going, oh my goodness, if we want to learn how to lead people and influence, we should learn from the person that changed the entire date that we live in today. And so that's been the best book that we've ever read to be able to get solid core principles on how we should live a life as a couple, how we should live a life when it comes to influencing others and speaking. And, you got to think they traveled by foot and somehow they made a big enough impact where literally 1/3 of the population was completely changed in 3.5 years. I'm like, I've been in business for way longer than that. And I have Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and I have podcasts with people who have audiences and stuff. And it was just so such big influence. So that was one thing to look at and be like, wow, he definitely had some influence there. And then a quote is that one that I said that's really helped me, which is I'd rather do what I know is right than do what I already know is wrong and succeed. So I'd rather do what I already know is right and fail than do what I already know is wrong and succeed. So if you're in a business right now or in a passion or playing a sport or in a relationship that you hate, but it looks awesome in front of everyone else. I don't care if it's a $500,000 a year job or that $60,000 a year job that you got out of school. Figure out what you want. It doesn't matter what you look like to everyone else. If you go after what you feel like you should be doing in your life, with the core principles, the principles I learned from the Bible kept me intact with, am I making good decisions? Because you also don't want to make stupid decisions based on your feelings, but you need to make sure that you know where you want to go and that you're executing on what you know is right, even if you look like a failure in front of everyone else, because that's going to cause you to succeed far beyond your wildest dreams. So you'd rather do it right and fail than do what you already know is wrong and succeed.
Yeah, and to your point about Jesus's example, talk about somebody who had some real vision and passion that was going against the grain and then was able to really change and influence people's lives and create that fulfillment within himself and in others it's lasted for ages, That's exactly right.
We really appreciate you being here with us today. Nicholas and Amanda, could you tell our audience where they can find out more about you and your work online?
Oh, heck yeah. You can go to thebilliondollarbody.com. That's where tons of our blogs, podcasts are posted. We're doing some vlogs, so a bunch of fun stuff over there. And then there's also our 15-day challenge on there, which all the workouts are 100% free. Over 10,000 hours went into the research that's behind everything that's in that program. So though it's so simple and people can execute on it, a lot of hard work and dedication went into it, where you're getting the top knowledge of 2016, 2017, not old information. So Billion Dollar Body on Facebook, Nicholas and Amanda Bayerle on Snapchat. So all these different areas, just make sure if you go to our website, thebilliondollarbody.com, it'll have links to everything where you can literally just follow us everywhere. We make perfect content for every single platform that's not really shared across the board. So we always love blessing everyone with tons of cool stuff and the stuff that we learn with training all of our high level clients.
Well, we appreciate all the wonderful knowledge and wisdom and research that you share. And a very personal example, while we haven't yet had the opportunity to do your program, we did learn how to use a selfie stick for dual vlogging by watching your videos. So we have personal enjoyment
the
of
the selfie stick.
Yes. And it's like, should we be looking at the camera or each other? Like, which is the least awkward? And you guys have such a great example and fluidity in doing that. Such a side note, but yeah, we did.
Yeah, that's a totally random
You're
aside.
a great example for us. I'm learning to do that.
Yeah, but thank you all for all the knowledge and wisdom and the incredible stories that you've shared here today. I know our listeners are going to get a lot out of it, and we can't wait to share it with them. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you guys. It was such an honor being on the podcast today.
The Motivational Millennial Podcast is supported by Motivational Millennial Consulting Services. We work with organizations and teams to develop millennial leaders by understanding and tapping into millennial skills and values. In short, we strive to enrich organizations one millennial at a time. To learn more about our customized offerings, visit www.motivationalmillennial.com/consulting. Hello, and welcome to the after show for our conversation with Nick and Amanda. I really enjoyed talking to two other people.
I know. It was our first duo interview. That was fun. It's always a delicate dance of trying to negotiate four people all talking and interjecting and balancing out, but it was fun.
Yeah, I thought we all did really well and that everyone seemed to, have an opportunity to have their voice heard and have questions asked. And I don't know, it was really good. So we need to do more of these.
Yes. Thank you, Nick and Amanda, for being our first.
One day, then we'll be having an interview. We'll interview a whole group of people.
My God, a panel. Panel interview. Ivy, what madness are you saying?
Oh my goodness. Well, this is actually reminding me of what my takeaway was. I was really interested in Nicholas's story about how when he was a kid, he had this huge passion around motocross, but he never started because of this crippling fear that he had. And then ultimately hearing his worst fears about himself reflected back to him just totally derailed him. And I think it's an important point because it speaks to what keeps most of us from actually pursuing our passion or stepping out and doing something that we really want to do but are too afraid to do. And the reality is that we are going to experience fear anytime we do something new or anytime we are presented with something that's going to grow us. And then we may do it, and then we might be afraid many times after that. I mean, I remember when I was first doing dinner theater. It was not real theater, okay, but it was really fun. But it's dinner theater, and I was sick to my stomach for the first 10 performances of it, every time, So I think that the real skill is not in expecting yourself to be unafraid, but really in becoming comfortable with being afraid. and become comfortable with what's uncomfortable, and just practicing just kind of ignoring those fears, which is not as easy as it sounds. But I really think that that's the muscle to build, not the expectation that you are going to just be totally brave and fearless all the time. I think that's an unrealistic expectation, personally.
Yeah, and his description of that moment, I just remember my heart plummeting, because that's, I think, all of many of our biggest fear is to be called out as an imposter, or that we'll never be the best, or we'll never be great at something we care about and we love. And I think to anticipate that may happen can sometimes help bolster us against that fear and against the worry that we might not be enough.
The reality is that it isn't actually about what anyone outside of us is saying. It is about our own internal beliefs of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And the fact that those external people happen to be affirming our internal beliefs, and we're using it as an excuse to affirm our internal beliefs. I agree with you, because it's like knowing that there are going to be people who disagree with you, or there are going to be people who think that you could be better. No matter how famous or successful people are, there are obviously people who are still critical of them. So that's not really the real issue. Knowing that is really good, but it's not a reflection of anyone's talent or anyone's abilities. But what can stop you is believing that internal voice that's telling you those exact messages, that you're not good enough, that you're an imposter, that you're not okay. And just knowing too that those messages might be coming from the outside, but they're also coming from the inside. But that doesn't mean they're true. Mm-hmm. Just because they're coming from in your own mind, it doesn't make them any more true. And so becoming accustomed to hearing those messages and just acknowledging them, the internal messages, and acknowledging them and moving forward anyway, that's the real practice.
Which ties in with one of the key takeaways I really thought was intriguing from the conversation, which is when Nicholas was also talking about how he was able to be so extremely confident. And
that was neat.
What you're talking about with the inner messages, or the, things we tell ourselves inside our head, I think part of that extreme confidence is deciding which of those messages to believe. So we can believe the ones that say, you'll never do this right. Mm-hmm. You're going to be bad at this. You will never be the greatest. Or you can believe the messages that say, you know what? You could be great at this. Try. And if you mess up, no worries. Keep trying again. That's Carol Dweck's growth mindset, as she identifies it, is this idea that we are not fixed in our skills or talents or abilities, and that the brain is actually adaptable. There's neuroplasticity, so that we can learn and grow and become better or strive towards a goal. What's interesting is thinking about when Nicholas talks about this extreme confidence that he could do anything, even play basketball at 5'7",
which you could sense that energy from him too. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And it is that kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. I think when you start acting with extreme confidence, a lot of times people just say, oh, okay, well, clearly this person's confident. And there's a great, I forget what the story is exactly, but it's basically saying there was this robbery scheme that went on for a number of years where people would dress up as delivery people and just walk into Sears and just walk out with a refrigerator on a trolley, and no one would stop them because they just went in with such confidence that literally people were just like, oh, well, I guess they're supposed to be here. And so I think one thing I've seen along my journey in various fields is that extreme confidence, it's not about pretending to be something you're not. It's not about bluffing or saying you're an expert in something you have no idea what you're talking about. It's just recognizing that you are better than you probably think you are, and if you act like you're good, you will often live up to the way you're trying to act and be perceived.
Absolutely. And I also think that an important piece to everything we're talking about right now in the after show is self-compassion because we're talking so much about the importance and the power of recognizing the story that you're telling yourself and then actively choosing an empowering story. And both of us totally believe in the power of that and in the importance of that, and also in the fact that we each have the ability to do that thing. But it takes practice and it takes time. And I was listening to an amazing episode of the Robcast with Rob Bell today, and it was an old one called Seeds and Switches. And he was talking about how in our culture, because we're so industrialized and we have this instant gratification and we get like frustrated when there's just like the wheel on our Netflix thing, like for 1 second, you know, like, and we're like, why is this not happening? That we have an expectation of our growth and change and achievement to be instantaneous, like a switch, like an on and off switch. Like, oh my gosh, I want to be more compassionate. I want to be more productive. On. Now we're going to be more productive, you know, right. And like, it's just magically. But the reality is it's more like a seed. You know, you have to do the hard work of digging a big hole and like putting the seed in there and planting it and nurturing it. But that it is incremental change. And any time that you see any movement in yourself at all. So to your point, it's really important to choose those empowering stories. But in those moments when we're just like living out a disempowering story and we're stuck in it, sometimes even for days, having self-compassion through that. And then when we get to a place where we wake up and we're like, okay, you know, and I actually feel pretty confident. It's like, that's a win, you know, any kind of incremental change that we're making toward our goal, or especially in growth and transformation, is really important. And I think self-compassion and patience for ourselves along the way is important as well.
That is a critical point, because I think it's worth noting the role that privilege can play in this process too. And what I mean by that is, if from a very young age you are surrounded by people who are affirming you or telling you that you are going to be great, that you can do the things you set your mind to, then it's a lot easier to grow up with the confidence to say, oh yeah, I can do this because I've always been told my entire life I could, versus someone who has been told their entire life, you're stupid or you're dumb or you'll never amount to anything. And so part of what you're saying with the practice of this process is that it takes time and repetition to start to internalize and actually believe the story, especially when you haven't had some of those opportunities or the successes you can point back to, which is why one of the things we talk about in our motivational assemblies is looking back at times you overcame some really challenging points in your life as examples of times when you were strong. And so you might look back and say, gosh, well, I went through all this as a kid and I had all these problems. But it's like, if you're still here today, that means you managed to overcome them, or at least deal with them in a way that kept you here. And that's worth celebrating.
Yay! Celebrating. I think that's... I know.
Celebrate good times. Come on.
I think we don't take enough of the opportunities we have to say yay whenever we're celebrating. And I hope that genuinely, you amazing audience listeners out there, first of all, I just want to say how much we really appreciate you listening, that you're here. This is amazing. And I want to say, yay! Can we have a high five right now?
Boom.
Yeah.
We high-fived you, motivational millennial listeners.
Yeah, we're high-fiving each other that you are listening to us, and that's really amazing and something to be really grateful for.
And I'd like to encourage you to high-five yourself right now.
High-five yourself.
I don't think you've high-fived yourself enough today.
Or if you're on the subway or whatever, just high-five random people on the street.
That's right. If your family is around you, high-five them. If they ask why, you don't have to explain.
Spread the celebration.
Just say yay.
And just say, you've earned this today. Because you know what? Everyone you met probably has earned a high five at least once throughout the day. Huh?
That's right. One of my favorite mottos is everyone feels underappreciated and misunderstood. And if you can give them a little extra appreciation with a high five, I think you'll definitely improve somebody's day.
It sounds like we're totally BSing you right now, but we're both so serious. It's not even funny.
I know.
Oh my God. gosh. But it's true.
Hashtag young Tony Robbins. Say yes. Say yes. Sorry, this is another epic after show outro explosion.
Yeah, and
You sound so serious. No, you're right. And
I also think it's just really important too to say that we hope that you are celebrating yourself. That's a great question to kind of leave on. And on a more relatively serious note, be joyous about it. It doesn't be that serious, but what is it that you are celebrating today?
After you take a minute to think about that, feel free to go onto our Facebook page, facebook.com/motivationalmillennial, and let us know what you're celebrating this week. And we hope you'll celebrate with us next week on another episode of the Motivational Millennial Podcast.
Yay!
Bye! For show notes and upcoming guests, or to learn more about Coactive Coaching, the blog, and our other awesome offerings, visit motivationalmillennial.com. Keep in touch with us at facebook.com/motivationalmillennial.
We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email with your thoughts, comments, and suggestions at podcast@motivationalmillennial.com. And tell us who you might like to hear from, or if you think you or anyone you know would be good for the show.
The Motivational Millennial Podcast is edited by Christy Hostler and Team Podcast.
Our theme music was composed and performed by Blake Brandis. Have a great week, Motivational Millennials!